Abduction by Ch, Chapter 7. Bonnie ran out of the school office when she saw her mom's car. Mrs. Schulter stopped in the bus zone, jumped out, then put an arm around her daughter's shoulders as they hurried inside. "He didn't come to the bus," Bonnie said. "So I went to his room and he wasn't there. We looked everywhere." Mrs. Jules explained about the hall pass and how she checked in the boys' bathroom. Mr. Quinn told about calling the bus drivers and Matt's friends. Other teachers said they had searched the classrooms and the playground. "We need to call the police," Mrs. Schulter said. She took a phone from her purse and dialed 911. Everyone in the office listened to the call. "The police are coming," she said when she hung up. Teachers wove in and out of the office, asking if Matt had been found yet. Several walked back through every room in the school again, checking closets, restrooms, and the cafeteria for any sign of the missing boy. By the time the police arrived, the staff felt positive Matt was not on school grounds. The policeman, Officer Calvin, asked the same questions Mr. Quinn had asked, plus a few more. Would he have left the school grounds by himself? To buy candy, perhaps? "Absolutely not," Mrs. Schulter said. "Would he have left with someone else? Maybe accepted a ride home?" "No," Mrs. Schulter said. "He always rides the bus with me," Bonnie said. "Did anyone other than the staff come to the school this afternoon?" Mrs. Williams said a parent picked up a sick child, a volunteer came to hear the first graders read, and a package was delivered to the library. "I didn't get any packages today," Mrs. Peyton said. Everyone turned to look at the librarian. Mrs. Williams picked up the sign-in sheet. "A delivery man came at 2:25 with a box for the library. He signed in and took a visitor's badge, and I told him how to find the library." She frowned. "He didn't sign out, though." "I didn't notice before. He never signed out." She counted the badges in a small box next to the sign-in sheet. "He didn't return the badge, either." "I never got a delivery," Mrs. Peyton repeated. Officer Calvin asked, "What company was the delivery man with?" "UPS," Mrs. Williams said. "He had a package for the library and—" "Are you sure he said UPS?" Officer Calvin asked. "Was it the regular driver?" Mrs. Williams ran one hand nervously through her hair. "I didn't recognize him, but he said he was from the UPS. He carried a box and a clipboard, and he had on a brown UPS uniform." "Did you see his truck?" the officer asked. "I didn't look for his truck." "Would someone call UPS, please?" Officer Calvin said. Mr. Quinn looked up the UPS number and called. It took a while to get a live person on the line, but when he did, he explained what had happened. He gave the school address. Then he put one hand over the telephone mouthpiece and whispered, "She's checking." A moment later he said, "Are you certain?" Then after a pause he said, "Thank you. Yes, I'll let you know." Even before Mr. Quinn hung up, Bonnie knew from his expression what he was going to say. "UPS had no delivery scheduled here today," Mr. Quinn reported. Mrs. Williams covered her mouth with one hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "This isn't your fault," Mr. Quinn said. "You had no reason to suspect the man wasn't who he said he was." "He lied," Mrs. Jules said. "Maybe he came here to try to steal a child, and he saw Matt alone." Bonnie's throat felt tight, the way it always did when she came down with a bad cold. Officer Calvin said, "It appears Matt was by himself at the wrong time." Mr. Quinn pounded his fist on the countertop. "We've tried to have good security," he said. "We tried to prevent something like this. We even had an assembly on what to do and say if approached by a stranger." "It's hard to prevent every possibility," the officer said. "Matt knows not to go anywhere with a stranger," Mrs. Schulter said. "We talked about it many times. He's been told to scream and run away if anyone tries to take him." "None of the staff noticed anything unusual," Mr. Quinn said. "Nobody heard Matt yell." "He would never leave with someone he doesn't know," Bonnie insisted. The police officer shook his head. "Even kids who know better sometimes get tricked," he said. "The man probably lied to him, and Matt believed what he was told." "Are you saying you think Matt went willingly?" Mrs. Schulter asked. "It happens, even with kids who've been taught all the right things. The trouble is, we can't figure out in advance what some crook might say." "I can't believe Matt would do that." Bonnie couldn't believe it either. I'll need a photo of Matt as soon as possible, Officer Calvin said, and a full description including the clothes he wore today. I believe this case warrants issuing an Amber Alert. What's that? Asked Bonnie. Matt's description will be broadcast immediately on the Emergency Alert Network. It's a system used for severe weather emergencies such as tornadoes or volcanic eruption. An Amber Alert will get Matt's description out to the public instantly with messages on the highway reader boards and on radio and TV. Thousands of people will be looking for him within an hour. Thank you, Mrs. Schulter said. I wish we could broadcast a description of the abductor or the vehicle Matt left in. More than once, a motorist has spotted a car that police were looking for and called to report its location. But a description of the boy might be enough. Mrs. Schulter opened her wallet, took out a picture of Matt, and handed it to Officer Calvin. When was this taken? He asked. 2 weeks ago. Good. You wouldn't believe how many parents don't have a recent picture of their kids. One woman gave me a snapshot taken at her daughter's 3rd birthday party. The girl was 10 years old when she disappeared. Bonnie said, Mom's always taken pictures of us for a scrapbook and to send to our grandparents. We'll put Matt's picture on the TV news and give it to the papers. Pictures work. People see a photo of a cute kid like this and they pay attention. They look for him. I always thought the police waited 24 hours to declare a person missing, Mr. Quinn said. An adult, yes. Adults often leave home voluntarily without telling anyone. In a case like this with the child, the faster we move, the better. We don't use the Amber Alert often, but I think it's justified today. What can we do to help? Bonnie asked. First, tell me what Matt was wearing, Mrs. Schulter said. Jeans, a blue Mariner's t-shirt, and white shoes. The kind with the heels that light up when you walk. As soon as I call us in, I'd like to bring a police dog to your home and let him sniff Matt's clothes. Maybe the pajamas he slept in last night. Of course, Mrs. Schulter said. She gave the address. Bonnie could tell Mom was struggling to keep her emotions under control. Her voice sounded tight, and she kept fingering the strap on her shoulder bag. Do you want to ride with me? The officer asked. Or would you like me to follow you? I'll drive. You can follow me, Mrs. Schulter said. I'll need to have my car. Is there anything more any of us can do? Mr. Quinn asked. Please stay here, the officer said. Another officer will be here shortly to question everyone and to get a description of the man who claimed to be with UPS. Mrs. Williams said, I know exactly what he looked like. He had curly black hair and a mustache, and there was a tattoo of a flower on one arm. A rose, I think. I'd recognize him or a picture. Why would he take Matt? Bonnie asked. Because he happened to be there, Officer Calvin said. A crime of opportunity. Bonnie and her mother rode home without talking. The police car followed. Usually, Mrs. Schulter parked in the garage, but this time she pulled up in front of the house. Officer Calvin parked behind her. She opened the front door and motioned for the police officer to come inside as a second squad car parked behind the first one. The Amber Alert has gone out, Officer Calvin said. Then he introduced Detective Morrison. I have a canine partner, Detective Morrison said. I'd like to bring him in and let him smell clothing Matt wore recently. You'd better shut Pookie in the kitchen, Mrs. Schulter told Bonnie. He's still asleep, but he might smell another dog and get in the way. Pookie's your dog? Officer Calvin said. Not much of a watchdog, I'm afraid, Mrs. Schulter said. He's old, Bonnie explained. He doesn't see or hear very well, but he's a great dog. Detective Morrison went out to get her canine dog. Bonnie headed for the Pookie's basket in the kitchen. When it was empty, she looked under the dining room table and in her bedroom. She checked all of Pookie's favorite napping spots, then checked the backyard. She whistled and called. Bonnie rushed back into the living room. Mom, she said, Pookie's gone.